It all started on a Friday afternoon, the kind of day that should have been peaceful. But when I walked into my garage, I nearly dropped my coffee. Two massive trucks, parked side by side, blocked every inch of space. And they weren't mine. I rubbed my eyes, convinced I was seeing things. But the license plates were unmistakable. HOA Karen's. Yes, the same woman who had been making my life a nightmare. For months had somehow managed to sneak her vehicles into my garage without my knowledge. My jaw dropped, and a mixture of anger and disbelief surged through me. This wasn't just trespassing. This was personal. I called Grandpa immediately. Grandpa wasn't one to sit quietly when injustice struck close to home. He was a man of action, with decades of experience, dealing with people who thought they could push others around. When he arrived, his eyes scanned the garage and locked onto Karen's trucks like a hawk. "They won't be going anywhere today," he muttered under his breath. And I knew he had a plan. Karen had always been a problem. Ever since moving into the neighborhood, she had run her HOA like it was her personal kingdom. Complaints, warnings, and ridiculous fines. She had thrown them all at me, each one more absurd than the last. But this crossed the line. Her audacity had reached a new peak, and Grandpa wasn't about to let her get away with it. He circled the trucks, inspecting every inch. With a few quick moves, he managed to block the doors using chains and his old, trusty padlock. The sound of the metal clicking into place was almost musical, a warning that Karen's bold move had met its match. Then he dialed 911, calmly explaining the situation, making sure the authorities understood the extent of Karen's reckless behavior. Meanwhile, I watched in awe as Grandpa's plan unfolded. He had trapped the trucks in such a way that even the most determined driver couldn't escape without a serious headache. And Karen had no idea what was coming. I could almost hear her angry voice in my head, screaming and demanding that the trucks be moved. But today, her usual tantrums would be ignored. Today, the law would step in. By the time the dispatcher confirmed that officers were on their way, the sense of satisfaction was almost tangible. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of relief and a little excitement. We were about to see Karen face consequences she couldn't argue her way out of. By the time Karen returned, the scene in my garage was nothing short of cinematic. Her two trucks sat immobile, chains glinting under the garage lights, and the padlocks locking them in place like silent sentinels. I could hear her stomping up the driveway before she even appeared in view, her high heels clanging against the concrete, as if she were announcing her presence to the entire neighborhood. Her face twisted in disbelief the moment she saw what Grandpa had done. What is this?" she yelled, her voice rising like a siren. Grandpa leaned against the garage door, arms crossed, the picture of calm authority. "You parked in the wrong place, Karen," he said evenly, though I could see the faint smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Now your trucks aren't going anywhere until the cops get here." Karen's eyes darted back and forth between the padlocks and the chains, panic beginning to creep into her expression. "You can't do this! This is my property!" she shrieked, her hands flailing as if she could magically lift the trucks herself. But Grandpa stood firm, unwavering. He had dealt with Karen's theatrics before, and he knew that losing his composure would only give her the upper hand. Neighbors had started to gather, drawn by the commotion. Some watched silently, while others whispered about Karen's audacious behavior and how she seemed to think she was above the law. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, trapped by the very law she claimed to enforce. As the minutes dragged on, Karen's panic escalated. She pulled out her phone, presumably to call someone influential, but Grandpa calmly shook his head. "The cops are already on their way. I suggest you stay put and wait." His voice carried, a weight that made even the most defiant person hesitate. Within 10 minutes, the distant wail of sirens announced the arrival of local police officers. They stepped out of their patrol cars, scanning the scene quickly before approaching. Karen, she waved her arms frantically, trying to explain, but the officers remained professional, listening carefully to Grandpa's side first. He outlined the situation in a clear, concise manner, making sure to highlight Karen's blatant trespassing and the obstruction of personal property. Karen's protests grew louder, more frantic, but it was too late. The law had arrived, and there was nothing she could do to talk her way out of this one. I watched as the officers gently but firmly advised her that the trucks were impounded until further notice, and that she could face legal consequences for her actions. For the first time in months, I felt vindicated. Grandpa's meticulous planning had worked perfectly, and Karen's reign of intimidation had hit an unexpected roadblock. Literally. Karen's face was a mix of fury and disbelief as the officers finished their report. She stomped her heels against the driveway, but every step only emphasized how trapped she really was. Grandpa, standing beside me, didn't flinch. He knew that patience was part of the victory. Karen had always thrived on intimidation, on pushing people until they broke, but today, she was the one cornered, and there was nothing she could do about it. The officers began taking statements from neighbors who had quietly witnessed Karen's antics for years. One neighbor admitted, almost sheepishly, that Karen had blocked his driveway last month without reason, and another revealed a string of complaints she had filed over trivial matters. The more evidence the officers gathered, the clearer it became that Karen's behavior wasn't just annoying, it was a pattern of harassment. The look on her face shifted from anger to panic as she realized she was facing more than just a temporary inconvenience. She was facing accountability. Grandpa leaned closer and whispered, "Sometimes, Karen, you have to learn the hard way." His calm tone only fueled her frustration. She tried one last-ditch effort, waving her hands and arguing, but the officers gently but firmly reminded her of the trespassing laws she had violated. Her trucks weren't going anywhere, and her credibility was unraveling fast. For the first time, Karen didn't have a ready excuse or a threatening tone to intimidate others. She was entirely out of control and out of options. I watched quietly, a mix of satisfaction and relief washing over me. Months of constant tension, unfair fines, and HOA harassment had led to this moment. It wasn't just about the trucks in the garage, it was about reclaiming my space, my peace of mind, and proving that no one, not even an overbearing HOA leader, could walk over me. Grandpa's strategy had been perfect. Calm, calculated, and unshakable. As the officers began issuing citations for trespassing and obstruction, Karen's voice had dwindled to a mutter. She realized that everyone around her, the neighbors, the authorities, even me, had seen her true colors. The sense of justice was almost tangible, and I could feel the weight of months of frustration lift off my shoulders. Grandpa gave me a knowing nod, a silent acknowledgement that sometimes wisdom, patience, and a little clever planning were all it took to turn the tables. Finally, the officers escorted Karen off the property, her trucks remaining safely locked in my garage until the legal process played out. The neighborhood breathed a collective sigh of relief, as if a storm had passed. And me? I couldn't help but grin. This wasn't just a victory for me. It was a lesson in standing your ground and knowing that sometimes the boldest move isn't aggression, it's strategy. The garage was finally quiet again, the trucks securely trapped, and Grandpa turned to me with a small smile. "Sometimes you just have to let karma do the driving," he said. If you enjoyed this wild HOA Karen story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more crazy real-life stories. Drop a comment below. What would you have done if this happened to you? And give this video a like if you love seeing karma in action. Your support helps me bring even more jaw-dropping stories straight to you.